She thought the classroom was her sanctuary, a place to teach, inspire, and rise above the prejudice she'd battled all her life. But one reckless act would shatter that peace. A student, fueled by hate, crossed a line so dangerous that it left everyone stunned. What didn't he know was that the woman he targeted carried a past far more powerful than his cruelty. A past that would change everything. This isn't just a story about a teacher. It's about what happens when racism collides with hidden strength. It was supposed to be a normal school day. Ms. Johnson, a respected science teacher, walked into her lab the way she always did, organized, calm, and ready to inspire her students. She loved her work, pouring herself into lessons, determined to prove that education could open doors no matter the barriers. To most, she was just another teacher in the building. But to those who knew her, she was a symbol of quiet strength, carrying herself with dignity despite the subtle slights and whispers that sometimes followed her. That morning, nothing seemed unusual. Yet beneath the ordinary routine, tension was quietly building. One student, harboring a dangerous mix of hate and arrogance, was about to test just how far that strength could go. The morning started like any other, but by mid-class, the atmosphere had shifted. Whispers floated across the room, snickers that seemed directed not at the lesson, but at the woman teaching it. Ms. Johnson kept her composure. She always did. Years of navigating subtle racism had taught her how to stand tall in silence. But this was different. One student, a boy known for his arrogance, wasn't whispering anymore. His remarks grew bolder, his words sharper, each one laced with venom meant to strip her of dignity. At first, she ignored it. She had endured stares, mockery, and dismissive tones before. But when he muttered a slur loud enough for the class to hear, the room froze. A silence thicker than any lecture filled the space. Her heart pounded, but she refused to let him see her break. Still, the damage was done. The balance of respect in the room teetered dangerously. The boy leaned back in his chair, smirking, as if daring her to react. Every second dragged like an hour. Other students shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to speak up or stay quiet. Ms. Johnson pressed on, determined to keep control of her classroom. But inside, she felt the weight of every eye watching, every second of humiliation stretching longer. Then came the moment that shattered the fragile calm. The boy rose from his seat, his chair screeching against the floor. His steps echoed as he crossed the room, not toward the door, but straight toward her. There was no mistaking his intent. His face twisted with rage, his fists clenched as he barked words that stung like knives. She stood firm, unwilling to show fear, even as he loomed closer. And then, the unthinkable. He reached out, his hand striking at her throat. Gasps erupted, students scrambled back, and time seemed to slow. Ms. Johnson felt the crushing force of hatred made physical, a moment that turned her classroom into a battlefield. But what no one in that room knew, what even the boy himself could never have imagined, was that this teacher carried a past built on discipline, resilience, and strength. A past that would not allow her to crumble under his cruelty. The attack had begun, but the real story, the one no one saw coming, was only just unfolding. The grip on her throat tightened, and for a split second, Ms. Johnson felt the weight of every injustice she had endured pressing down on her. The classroom wasn't just a classroom anymore. It was a stage, every student frozen in shock, watching whether their teacher would crumble or rise. The boy's eyes burned with arrogance, convinced that in this moment, he held all the power. But something inside her shifted. Years of discipline, of training, of surviving environments far harsher than this, came rushing back. She wasn't just a teacher standing in front of a classroom. She was a soldier who had once been taught never to yield. With a sudden surge of strength, she twisted free, her body moving with a precision that stunned everyone watching. The boy stumbled, his smirk gone, replaced with disbelief. The room erupted in gasps. The same students who had once doubted her now saw her in a different light, not as a victim, but as a force they had never imagined. Her voice, steady and commanding, cut through the chaos. "You will not break me." The bully froze, the power dynamic shattered in an instant. What was supposed to be an act of humiliation had flipped into something else entirely, a lesson none of them would ever forget. But beneath the surface, the tension remained. Because while she had defended herself in that moment, Ms. Johnson knew this wasn't the end. The stairs, The whispers, the prejudice, they would follow her long after this day. And as the silence settled in the lab, one chilling thought lingered. The fight against hate doesn't end with one confrontation. It only begins. The classroom eventually quieted, but nothing felt the same. The boy, once so sure of his dominance, now stood exposed, stripped of the power he thought hatred could give him. For Ms. Johnson, the marks on her neck would fade, but the moment itself left an imprint deeper than any bruise. She had defended herself, yes, but the greater weight was knowing why she had been forced to in the first place. Not because of misbehavior, not because of teenage recklessness, but because of the color of her skin. In the days that followed, the story spread through the school like wildfire. Some saw her as a hero, finally revealing the strength they never knew she carried. Others, however, whispered excuses for the boy's actions, twisting the narrative, downplaying the violence, and ignoring the truth. And in that divide lay the real tragedy, because this wasn't just about one teacher in one classroom. It was about a system, a culture, a world where Black women are too often tested, doubted, and forced to prove their worth in ways others never have to. Ms. Johnson continued teaching, her resolve stronger than ever. But each lesson carried with it a silent reminder. Strength alone shouldn't be the price of survival. No one should have to summon their past, their trauma, or their training just to stand against hate. Her story is not an isolated one. It echoes in workplaces, in neighborhoods, in classrooms everywhere. The question is not whether racism still exists. The question is, when will we finally decide that one story like this is one too many? Because silence protects no one. And if we turn away, the cycle will continue. So, ask yourself, what will you do the next time hate dares to show its face?